Hello friends, this is Debbie Havens, Purchasing Specialist for the Lake Stevens School District. I'd like to talk to you today about purchase orders, also referred to as POs. Here are some of the agenda items we'll be covering today: vendor file, procurement requirements and purchasing thresholds, account codes, comp tax, encumbrance and open PO review, additional information, and contacts. Purchase orders are the official documents that our district issues to a seller for the sale of specific products or services to be delivered in the future. The main advantage of using a purchase order is the ability to place an order without immediate payment. In order for a purchase order to be used, the office professional will first need to verify that the vendor will accept one. Some vendors will only accept payment by credit card. If the vendor accepts purchase orders and the amount of the order is $50 or greater, a PO needs to be used. Purchase orders need to be the default over credit cards, as they are easier to track, and also the district has more recourse if the order is damaged upon delivery or if it is incomplete. If a vendor isn't in our vendor file, the office professional will need to request that a W-9 is forwarded to the purchasing specialist. This will be attached to the vendor file in Skyward and is important for determining tax status. The current order and payment address will also need to be sent to the purchasing specialist, and then that vendor can be entered into Skyward. A vendor may require that a credit application is filled out. Please send these to the Accounts Payable Department for processing. For detailed instructions on entering a purchase order in Skyward, click on the question mark on your Skyward dashboard. When entering a purchase order, there are many things to consider. A purchase order should be based on the actual expected expenses, not over and not under. They should be used as a planning tool in advance and to help make budgeting decisions. Try to use appropriate account codes and rethink what you've done in the past. The activity and object codes have meaning and are used to provide important data to make budgetary decisions. One of the most important considerations is whether the order total will exceed bid thresholds. Please refer to the Procurement Requirements Matrix on our Employee Resources Business Services webpage to assist you with determining whether you will need to get quotes, go out for bid, or piggyback off of an existing contract. Keep in mind that there are different thresholds for state and federal funds. If purchasing off another organization's contract, you will need to reference the contract ID in the body of the purchase order and attach the quote and any other procurement forms to the PO in Skyward. Please ensure the quote references the contract ID and that the contract is valid. Contact the purchasing specialist if you need help doing this. Please be mindful of the fiscal year you are making a purchase for. Consumables should be purchased in the fiscal year for which they will be used. In addition, licensing details on subscriptions and software should be noted in the body of the PO with specific start and end dates. Another good reference to keep handy when entering a purchase order is the account code guide. The current guide can be found on our Business Services Employee Resources webpage, along with OSPI's Valid Account Code tool. If you don't have access to an account code in Skyward, please use the tool to determine if the code is valid. If it is a valid code, contact Alina Holmquist, Accounting Supervisor, and she will add the code into the chart of accounts. When you enter a purchase order, you will need to include whether tax is to be added. Many vendors will invoice us without including tax, but in Washington State, we are required to pay sales tax on taxable items. Please contact the purchasing specialist if you are unsure of whether an item is taxable. If shipping is charged, you will want to enter that as a separate line item in the body of the purchase order. Include a description of what is being purchased. This will help the purchase order approvers determine whether it is an allowable purchase and whether the item will need to be tagged for inventory purposes. When purchasing furniture, please check our district surplus. Quite often, we already have the item that you need. There are different rules to follow when purchasing with federal funds. Regardless of the dollar amount being spent, you must document equitable distribution and reasonable price. Indicate this on the approved invoice before submitting to accounts payable for payment. For purchases of $25,000 or more, you will need confirmation that the vendor isn't suspended or debarred from federal programs. This needs to happen prior to making the purchase. One method for doing this is to check the sam.gov website. Please see instructions on how to do this on our Employee Resources Business Services webpage. Verification that a vendor isn't suspended or debarred should be attached to the purchase order in Skyward. Other options for checking for suspension and debarment are requesting a suspension and debarment certification form from the vendor or requiring the vendor to sign a clause on our purchase order. A couple of other reminders when issuing a purchase order. Both the front and back of the vendor copy, which is the white copy, of the PO should be sent to the vendor. On the back of this copy are the district's terms and conditions. Please keep in mind when placing an order whether delivery will take place over a holiday or a break. If there won't be anyone available to accept the delivery at your site, you'll need to indicate to the vendor when delivery will be possible. The other option is to have the order delivered to the Educational Service Center. Upon receipt of the order, the courier will transport the items to your school. One final reminder. For budgeting purposes, it is recommended that you run an open PO report periodically to review and adjust POs as needed. The purchasing specialist can provide instructions for running that report if you are unsure of how to do this. If a purchase order should be increased or decreased, email or enter office a signed requisition to the purchasing specialist. If a purchase order has been fulfilled but is still in open status, please email the purchasing specialist to let them know it can be closed. Or if you have the yellow receipting copy of the PO, sign it and send it in. Here is a list of contacts you may want to refer back to. Thanks for your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful school year.